1 year later, and Resolve Bahamas has yet to collect anything at all from those $100 million in bad loans. The state finance minister defends the Bahamas receivership. This as one union president calls for the government to step in and assist those laid off from the resort. Plus, the Red Ribbon Ball is just days away. We got those stories and more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and NB12 starts right now. Top news tonight, 1 year after Resolve Bahamas absorbed $100 million in non-performing loans from the Bank of the Bahamas, Resolve Chairman James Smith says the company has not yet collected on any of the bad loans, not $1. He said Resolve is presently evaluating the actual value of the debt, which he suggested could be as low as half of the $100 million that was transferred off BOB's books. He told NB12 Today, Resolve can't perform miracles.
You know that what you gave me, I won't be able to give you back $100 million if I sold all of these things. So we want to be sure of that coming out of the gate, that you, or ultimately the Bahamian taxpayer, could not expect us to perform that kind of a miracle.
The Christie administration effectively bailed out the Bank of the Bahamas last year, creating a company called Resolve Bahamas, which absorbed $100 million worth of the bank's bad commercial loans. Government announced the move on October 31st, explaining Resolve will hire others to collect on the bad debt. Smith said today Resolve has not yet collected on any of the loans, as the company is currently evaluating the assets turned over by the bank to determine their current market value, which will likely be less than the $100 million in promissory notes.
In examining it at first blush, the value of the loans, or the collateral for the loans, is not $100 million. It's some figure less than that. I can't say exactly what it is because that's what we're doing right now through the managers. The managers would be the Deloitte and Touche. And so we are basically putting together a plan which involved having an opening balance to see a valuation on all of the loans that came over. Because we have to now go back to the government and say, well, look, you gave a note for $100 million. But what we have here is more like 50 or 40.
Smith said as Resolve works to evaluate the properties and determine the real value of the assets, it will separate them into categories. He said in the case of business loans, it might be possible to revive the business and allow it to repay, while others will have to be outright sales. He said Resolve expects to have some difficulty with the latter, as the market is already overcrowded with real estate sales. He said the evaluation process should be completed in a month or so.
It's no particular rush, in this market. You've got to kind of, and given the nature of this whole affair, being a wholly owned government company with a specific mandate to liquidate bad loans, bearing in mind the bank had problems collecting on the loans. And we're just making sure that we have a proper audit trail, that someone coming after us would see we did things properly and above board and not rushing in order to say, well, I got them off the books, but a fire sale and that type of thing. I don't want that to happen, so we're going to just take our time and try to do it properly.
NASA Guardian Business last month reported there's still some concerns about bad commercial debt at the Bank of the Bahamas, and it's possible the $100 million transferred to Resolve was not enough, and it's likely that more debt could be transferred to Resolve in the future. Asked about this, Smith said it's possible if government is minded.
But the effect of that is the same as what's happening now. The government incurs an additional debt that ultimately would have to be paid by the taxpayer. And so it might make sense to move more of the loans off. But again, that's only one element, I think, of a larger plan.
Smith said at the end of the day, to put the Bank of the Bahamas back on good footing, you'd have to take more steps than just cleaning up the balance sheet. Focus would also have to be placed on the bank's operations. Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis has dismissed Bahamar CEO Sarkis Mirlian's assertion that the government and Export-Import Bank of China have destroyed any hope of the multi-billion-dollar resort becoming a reality. Halkitis insisted today that while Ismirlian is obviously disappointed, the Christie administration does not share his view and believes the appointment of a receiver is the quickest way to get the troubled resort open and the thousands of Bahamians back to work. Vanik Toot reports.
Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis has defended the appointment of a receiver at Bahamar following the assertion by CEO Sarkis Ismirlian that it continues the unfortunate pattern of disastrous actions taken by stakeholders. Halkitis said the Christie administration has only sought to do what is in the best interest of the country.
Obviously, he would have preferred a different outcome. We don't share the view. We think this is a way to get to a speedy resumption and completion of the resort. You know, there were some efforts, many efforts for a negotiated settlement between the developer, the bank, and the construction company. The government was a facilitator. So I think obviously he would have preferred a different outcome. We don't share the view. We think that this is a way to get the resort started, completed, opened, Bahamians to work.
And what do you make of his assertion? Supreme Court Justice Ian Winder recently approved an application from the Export-Import Bank of China, which is Bahamar's secured creditor, to send Bahamar into receivership. Ismirlian blasted the move yesterday and asserted that China Construction America failed to meet its promises to complete the resort on the timetables it set. He also accused the Bahamas government of failing to meet its promises to Bahamar, including making timely payments of monies it was obligated to pay Bahamar. However, Halkitis says it didn't quite happen that way.
We feel we did all we could. I think in respect particularly to the issue as to outstanding payments for the road, it's incumbent upon the government to ascertain that when we do pay over taxpayers' money, that we are paying for something that that's an obligation of ours. A lot of that process was really ascertaining exactly how much was spent on the road and therefore how much the government.
Ismirlian said the government, in concert with CCA and China Exim Bank, took a course of action to have the Chapter 11 dismissed. He said this means the bank is now the owner of Bahamar. Most of its employees have been laid off. There has been widespread collateral damage to hundreds of businesses, and its assets are being further impaired. However, Halkitis says no one wants to see the developer pushed out.
He has been the founder, the visionary behind all of this, and all of us hope that we can get to some situation where there can be a solution that satisfies everybody. Obviously we've come a long way along this process, and I think, but the bottom line is, I think everybody concerned is just wanting to see the resort started, the construction resumed, resort completed, and operating and people working. Of course, nobody would like to see, someone who has invested so much be completely out, and so we hope that's not the case.
The appointment of a receiver came after 2,000 Bahamar employees were laid off. Bahamar filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Delaware on June 29th. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vanik Toot.
National Congress of Trade Unions President John Pinder says with 2,000 former Bahamar employees now on the unemployment line, government should find a temporary solution to assist those workers until the resort can be finished and opened. Simone Davis reports.
The NCTU president said Bahamar's recent redundancy exercise is not only a blow to the government, but also the public and the trade union movement. He said whatever resolution the government comes up with to assist the former Bahamar employees would essentially put another tax on the Bahamian people.
It's a blow economically to the country. It's certainly a tremendous blow to the trade union movement. And as it relates to families being impacted, when you multiply 2,000 by 3, maybe even 4 in some cases, that's a large amount of persons that is impacted by that. Coupled with the fact that I have walk-in thrown in. So whatever assistance the government thinking of, that's going to say put some tax on the public purse. Okay, and so we're hoping that this thing, comes to a favorable conclusion in short order. I believe within the next 6 months or so, maybe something should be materializing out there. Persons back to work.
Pinder asserted that after those thousands of workers were laid off, matters only got worse for Bahamas. Pinder suggested that now is the appropriate time for the government to intervene, but only to make a move that'll benefit the economy and the former employees.
Wearing my cap as president of the National Congress of Trade Unions, certainly we have this concern that the whole Bahama project have to, at some point, be completed. It's unfortunate to have 2,000 persons out of job. They're not working. And while some persons were talking about temporary layoff, the letters suggest that it was a separation package based on one or two of the letters I've seen. And they actually put in the amount owed to these persons as relates to their severance pay. While they're well-trained persons, they were actually trained by Bahamas. It's expected of them to be rehired once the establishment is completed and open.
Pinder suggested that in order to prevent the economy from slipping into another recession, the government should utilize those workers who were trained at Bahamas and place them at smaller hotels around the country to help improve the sector all around.
For certain, I know they're well trained, based on what I've heard and based on the training they went through, that they probably can help some of the smaller properties that don't have that level of professionalism. I believe it would be a good thing for the government to, we had the 52 weeks program thing, maybe just think about a 6 months program and kind of share them around some of the smaller properties to bring them up to standard. And where some of the other properties need help or maybe weak in some sort of being able to cater to the guests in a more professional manner, maybe I believe they ought to see if they can work something out where these persons could be absorbed, some of them could be absorbed into some of those other properties.
Reporting for NB